You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live.
Hello and welcome to Garibaldi Red Nottingham Forest podcast, Nottinghamshire Live. My name is Matt Davies and it is, the afternoon after the night before when it comes to Nottingham Forest and the transfer window, which we shall break down and assess about how good, how bad, how awful, how uplifting it was in the company of, first of all, Reds legend Garry Birtles. Gary, good afternoon, you well?
Good afternoon, yeah, good, thank you.
Good. And returning to the podcast again is Reds fan Michael Temple. Temps, you well?
Good, thanks, Matt. Looking forward to getting stuck into this debate with Garry. Just wish that we were in a slightly better position to that which when we spoke last time. But unfortunately, still rooted.
Yes, well, we'll come on to on the pitch. Certainly plenty to talk about there. Off the pitch, I'm going to refer to my phone here and go through what actually happened in the transfer window. And then we can break it all down. So Forest ended up with 8 signings, potentially 9, as they wait on Dejed Spence from Middlesbrough, a right-sided player. They're kind of hopeful of signing. But they did bring in, before the deadline day, Ethan Horvath, Jordi Osei-Tutu, Max Lowe, James Garner and Philip Zinckernagel. And then on deadline day, it all kicked off, I guess, with loads and loads happening. So in came Mohamed Drager, Brian Ajeda, Zande Silva and potentially Spence, and then out went yesterday Jordan Gabriel, Nuno da Costa on loan, and Harry Arter on loan to Charlton. Right, I suppose it seems to have divided fans about how well it's actually gone or how badly it's gone. There's the positives of a younger squad, a smaller squad. Brennan Johnson and Joe Worrell are still here, and then on the flip side of that, a lot of late deals and a lot of rushing around and question marks about where the goals are going to come from because they didn't really get a striker in, although they did get Silva, but we can discuss him later. So, Gary, do you want to have first dibs on what kind of shape you think Forest are in now?
I've seen a quote say it seemed like a father who had forgotten his children's Christmas stocking filler and were left to see what was on the shelves of the local petrol station at 11 p.m. That's how it described the transfer window for Forest. So that's how
yes, this host described transfer deadline day. That was me, yeah. That's how it felt.
I thought it might be, yeah.
True story, yeah.
Yeah, and look, first of all we have to give these players, a chance. Most of us have never heard of many of them. And the Olympiacos connection is there again, which has not always been particularly good in the past for one of the signings coming in. I mean, the guy from West Ham, he's got 9 goals in 116 appearances, nearly as bad as me at Old Trafford. But yeah, we've lost 17 players, they say, and now the players that have come in, I think that what the fans were maybe looking for was named players or going for a sort of a striker who we could all be excited about and who might score us the goals that will get us up the league, but that hasn't happened, and that is the one thing that still worries me.
Temps, where do you stand on it? As I said, fans are very much in one camp or the other. How do you see it?
And with Garry, it's always a bit disheartening when you have to Google and extensively research a name that doesn't emote any initial feeling, which is why I'm probably most excited about watching Garner and Zinckernagel, because I think they're proven at this level. We know where they'll fit into this team. And we know they're of a quality that can improve what was at the club at the start of the season. I think I'm really weary about where we are at fullback. We desperately need those players to be in the 11 with the players that have been rotated out of the club. So we need to see a strong showing from those guys. But yeah, particularly concerned about the striker situation and scratching my head really, trying to imagine who's going to score 24 as this time around. So the 2 that stand out to me are the 2 that we already know the most about, Zinckernagel and Garner, who I think will be regulars in this side and have the biggest chance of being making an impact on the season from this point on.
Yeah, you've talked about the lack of goals, Gary, and you've pleaded for a striker to come in all summer, and they haven't got one really. We hope Silva's going to be good and make a difference. Is that your concern about where the goals are going to come from now still?
Of course it is. We've gone through this again and again, Matt, in previous podcasts saying, right, last season, we've talked about it. I'm fed up of repeating myself about it. The worst stats in the world were our stats in the opposition's penalty box, second lowest scorers. We can go through all that again. And you think, right, okay, we've said this before again. Well, if we get that area right, we've got half a chance. But we haven't got that. It's just the same old again. You know, as I've said, we've got to give these players a chance. But it doesn't make you think, oh wow, what a signing that is. Well, it doesn't me personally. I'm sure some of the Forest fans are similar. I'm sure Michael's the same. It's just I was just desperate for somebody to light up, the boards and say, right, okay, look at this for a signing. We've got a chance here, but it's not. We've got Lyle Taylor and we've got Lewis Grabban again, and we don't know whether the other guy from West Ham's a winger or a striker. So, what are we going to do for goals again? Yeah, we've got creation in midfield, which is good with the two you've mentioned, and the other ones who are coming in, might just be outstanding. I don't know. It might just work for them, but you have to reserve your judgment, and it doesn't sort of lift you as a Forest fan.
Do you think Silva starts on the back foot a bit, Temps? Because there was so much talk about Josh Madger coming in, who would have been a big money signing, and then you end up with Silva, who I think the understanding he's come in for a small sum, and you haven't taken too much of a gamble financially there. Do you have to just kind of wait and see with a player like Silva and hope he comes off as, we do hope he does, and he turns into another Antonio, not another Diakabi, for example?
Yeah, everyone has to impress when they walk into a football club at any level. And I think the first thing he'll need to do is win over his teammates and his manager before he even wins over the fans. But Houghton won't blood him unless he's convinced on the training pitch that he looks sharper than Grabban and Taylor. I think he does start on the back foot a bit. I think Madger would have got the fans slightly more excited. We obviously know of him from the famed Sunderland documentary, where he came across as a real humble and hardworking character, and he's gone on to have some success on the continent. So that was a name that got us excited. It didn't quite land, but I do feel we should trust the process. We've heard about the kind of Moneyball approach at Barnsley. We've recruited the recruiters that we hope can make that happen at Forest. So there will be a reason, or there should be a reason, if these players have come to the top of a pile off the back of a detailed analysis, a scouting network, rather than the kind of, the old school recruitment of the last couple of years, where there's just been a high volume of coming in. We've seen if anything will stick. I would hope these are well researched, and we find ourselves in 10, 15 games time, looking at the quality of these players and how their relative anonymity has potentially taken the Championship by surprise.
Is Ajada the one that interests you the most, Temps, coming from Paraguay? He sounds like the kind of player that Dane Murphy might be interested in. He's a bit of an unknown quantity, and YouTube highlights can make any player look good. But there does seem to be some kind of thinking behind Ajada. He's the one that interests me the most. Where do you stand on him? Yeah,
he seems to have the pedigree, doesn't he? Seems to have performed at a reasonably high standard. But again, time will tell. I was just looking at a quick start if I can. So Barnsley and Bournemouth crept into the playoffs last year with 78 and 77 points. And that's a benchmark of a top six club, which we have to aspire to be. Just feels a long way off at the minute. And within those, there was two methods of getting to there. Barnsley, not free scoring, kept it tight, scored 58, conceded 50. Bournemouth, a bit more free scoring, scored 73, conceded 46. But those point tallies of 77 and 78 just seem a real long way off at the minute. And we need instant impact from these boys if this season is going to have any level of aspiration whatsoever as we head towards Christmas.
Yeah, is that the concern, Gary? Because Ajada's going to need, he might have to be in self-isolation for a while. He's going to have to get familiar with English football. Same for Silva. We probably needed to these players hit the ground running if Forest are going to do anything, don't they, as Temp says?
The problem is it's a league called the Championship, which is brutal. We've seen it in the past. Players struggle, when they come from abroad. They find it difficult. We go back to the David Platt era when the three Italians came across, found it so difficult, and a lot more since in not just at our club but other clubs. It's the nature of the Championship. It is an absolute nightmare of a league, because it's the one that you aspire to get into the Premier League. So it's just a brutal 46 games a season, and you want these, as you say, to hit the ground running. And it's not easy in the Championship to do that, because the pace and how frenetic it all is takes everybody by surprise. Even the guys who've, played in it before, it does it every season. It gets harder every season, the Championship. And to be somebody who doesn't know anything about it and come in and be an instant success, it's going to be quite difficult. And if they do, fantastic. But I think it'll be an eye opener for them.
Does the Olympiacos connection worry you, Temps, with the Drager deal? I mean, if he come direct from Freiburg and he's a 25-year-old Tunisian international, then there's a different slant on him. I think fans have made their mind up about these players that come in from Ajax, Olympiacos now. Where do you stand on that as a fan?
Well, look, the transaction will be useful, won't it? Even if the player isn't. So there'll be a reason why this happening in the context of FFP. So while it's easy to say same old, players being recycled between this kind of network of clubs which Marinakis has close links to, in the context of FFP, it's impossible to go for it year after year after year. Even if our owner has the means to do that, it's not something that we can do and get away with. And we've seen the troubles that other clubs have got themselves into. So we have to praise the owner. There's no lack of cash here. There's no lack of a desire to invest in the squad. I think what we're all asking for as fans is that they're well researched, that Dane, Tamor, all the other guys at Forest now have the ability to make their own decisions based on the processes that serve them well at Barnsley. We as fans give these players some time to prove themselves, but we must maintain our expectations. We're Nottingham Forest. Look at Gary's CV, the things we've won in that era. We can't settle for being bottom of the Championship at any stage of the season, 5 games in or whatever. We can't allow our standards to slip. We still have to look forwards, challenge the club, challenge those that are in positions to make these decisions, remain supportive. I'm never one for booing at half time or chanting for a manager's head. But I think we all hope that after the high volume of transfers in the previous few windows, this one would be a bit more considered. But there was an awful lot of business yesterday, and that suggests that maybe some of the initial list of targets didn't materialise.
Yeah, I think that's true. You've touched on something I was going to raise anyway, and I'll come back to some other points, but We're Nottingham Forest is something I wanted to pick up on. I think you're going to disagree with me, Gary, but has the We're Nottingham Forest brand worn a bit, not thin, but has it lost its cachet a bit, the history? When you look at, Bournemouth got Morgan Rogers against Forest, and Forest got all the history in the world, and Bournemouth haven't. Forest have been in the Championship for 20 years now and not got near promotion for the last 10 of them, apart from the Lamucci flotation and collapse. Has Forest's place in the food chain dwindled a bit, Gary? And do we as fans need to accept that?
I don't think so. It's still because of the owner and the nature of, what he's done for the football club. The money is invested, right through COVID and everything, with no crowds there and keep funding the football club. He's been magnificent. I think people tend to forget that a little bit. The only income was coming in was from the owner keep putting money in, because the fans weren't allowed through the turnstiles. So you've got to give him huge credit for that. And we've just talked about how many players have gone. 17 players from that previous squad. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of players to lose. No matter if they were average or whatever, it's still a lot of players to lose from a squad, especially if you pick up injuries early in the season. The big boost is Joe's still there. McKenna and Worrell were 2 of the best last season. The stats show that. We were, I think, the 3rd best defensively in the Championship. And Brennan Johnson's still there. Myton's still there. So we have got potential to do well at the back again. But it's just the concern about up front again. I don't think you can take a chance on that position, because it's such a position that's why they get paid more than anybody else, because it's the hardest job in the business to put the ball in the back of the net. The old cliche. And anybody who's got those players who do that are the ones that compete at the top. You talked about Barnsley being the lowest scorers of the top 6 last season, but all the others, that's why they were up there, because they scored a lot of goals. And that's pure and simple. That's why they got into the playoffs, because they scored a lot of goals. Barnsley did it, quite rightly, a different way. There is a different way. And I've got so much admiration for the way Barnsley go about things, the way that Luton go about things, Coventry, teams like that. And that's the one thing about we are Nottingham Forest, that doesn't quite ring true, because teams like that, with a lot less money to spend, the budgets are so much smaller, they seem to be doing particularly better than us. And that is a massive concern for me.
Where do you think we are in the food chain, Temps, overall?
Yeah, look, I think we have to aspire to be a top 6 championship club, and then you've bought a ticket and anything can happen, can't it? We're resourced like that. We're certainly supported like that. The numbers through the turnstiles have sprung back immediately, and historically we've been right up there. So there's no lack of investment, and as Gary said, the owner has to be credited for that. We've got a chief exec and a recruitment network who are very new to the club, very highly reputed, by all accounts, great people as well, and committed to this project. I just hope they're given not the financial resource, but the time and the space to implement their methods. But yeah, clearly we're not competing at the top end of the championship. We are 24th in the championship. We have the worst records of all the team in this division, and that has to change quickly, because with so-called big club mentality comes certain ridicule from certain quarters when it's not all going your way. We're having a rough patch at the minute. We need to turn that around very, very quickly to maintain some positive sentiment and begin to stride forward.
What was more important, Gaz? Keeping Johnson and Worrell and not getting a striker, or would you rather have seen they got a striker in and maybe you sacrifice one of them? It's tough to know the balance, isn't it? You can criticise the club and you can praise the club for the work they've done this month. I think it's fair to say.
You just don't know what the situation is, whether the possibility was there to do all three, to keep the two of them and get another striker. I don't know what sort of money the players who've come in will be on, or contract-wise. Nobody does. Nobody seems to know the fees for everybody. But if it was possible to bring a striker in with the other two staying there, that would have been absolutely fantastic. If it wasn't possible, then maybe, the fans should know that it wasn't possible to be able to do everything. Sometimes you have to sacrifice. It's sad that, we've seen it before in the past with us getting rid of academy players. If we didn't get in contention, they've had to be sold. And we don't want to keep seeing that. We want to keep our gems at the football club, let them progress, let them mature and be good for Nottingham Forest, not because we're failing season after season that we have to let them all go, because that's counterproductive. And you've got to talk about the Derby game. The second half of it was particularly good, apparently. A lot better than the first when things were changed. I didn't see it because I was on my way Norwich to do Norwich Leicester, so I wasn't able to see it. But by all accounts, the second half was a lot better. And you've got to build on things like that. That is the last 45 minutes we played. So it's good that we got back in the game and we got a point. It was important to get that 1 point on the board. And now, progress from that. You've got to take confidence from that last 45. That's all you can do. Forget the first 45. You're 1-0 down. The second half, you won 1-0 and you drew the game. So, next thing, it's a good chance for the international break now to get everybody, on the training pitch, if it's at all possible, if they're not away internationally. And, it's a learning curve for the people coming in. And, hopefully Chris can work with them and we can come out the other end, a little bit more confident than we were going into it.
Yeah, I mean, just on the shape of the squad then, Temps, you've touched on about Dane Murphy there. Do we kind of have to give him until is it this time next year that we can really judge Dane Murphy? It was quite a tough ask coming in from Barnsley and trying to solve everything in one window like that, when Forest have historically made errors in previous windows, and January is going to be tough, whoever's in calling the shots. Do we have to be patient once again when it comes to transfers with Forest?
Yeah, of course you do. I mean, he's putting in place a strategy. He's gathering resources. He's directing a scouting network, recruiters, the manner in which we negotiate, the manner in which players are treated when they arrive at a club. He needs to be there for 4 or 5 years plus to bring that to fruition. Unfortunately, the victims in football when a change needs to be made is the manager, because it's frankly the easiest position to refill, and we see it time and time again. So Yeah, I'm certainly not judging Dane on our current predicament. Let's not forget he's inherited a bloated squad. I think getting players out of the football club has been as big an achievement as pulling a few in. We were just so bloated last year that the harmony simply wasn't there, and that translated into the performances on the pitch and the lack of points. So yeah, I mean, look, this guy is relatively young, fantastic CV, had a great impact at Barnsley where they made a profit. You know, that was a club that commanded transfer fees for 2 consecutive managers. I think Forest are probably still paying 3. So having that thought process, that consideration, that brain power in our club is definitely an asset. And I'm 100% behind Dane and the guys around him, some of whom I've met recently and are extremely impressive.
I suppose when you look at the outgoings, I think everyone would accept it's good to get Da Costa a loan move away, and Harry Arter was so out of favour. To get him off the books and playing some football somewhere else is probably good for him and perhaps good for Forest. Jordan Gabriel's probably the only interesting one you could debate. He put this comment when he went to Blackpool yesterday about nice to be somewhere unwanted. I think we all got the feeling they were waiting to move him on this summer. What did you make of him, Gary? I don't know how much you saw of him. Do you think he was quite at the level to make it at Forest, or is it a good move for him to go and play somewhere else?
I didn't see him much, but what I saw was, a little bit better than, on the other side, the left back situation. And I think he was a work in progress a little bit. And when you have those players, you have to give them a little bit more time. And maybe he didn't get the time he deserved. You can't expect to come in, as I say, the Championship is brutal. You don't come in and make an instant impact. It's difficult in any position. But fullbacks, it's not an easy position to play. A lot's expected of you now. When in our area, it was more or less like Frank Clark only came over the halfway line, very rarely. Colin Barrett did for the goal he scored against Liverpool, but it was more or less a fullback then. It wasn't an attacking fullback unless you were Viv Anderson. He was the first attacking fullback. People forget about that. Talk about attacking fullbacks. Viv was unbelievable, but he was a rarity. And now fullbacks are expected to get forward as well as do the defending, and sometimes they lose sight of how to defend because they've got to get forward and join in and be creative further up the pitch. So it becomes a little bit difficult. I just hope he goes, and anybody who goes somewhere else and tries to prove a point, I've got admiration for. But maybe he should have been given a little bit more time. I don't know. I didn't see enough of him, but what I saw of him, he didn't look out of place at all. Bong on the other side for me does look out of place.
What about you, Temps? I can see you nodding along. You agree with Gary's sentiments there?
Yeah, completely. I mean, the game has changed, hasn't it? And what's expected from a fullback has changed significantly. And we spoke last time about having 2 screening midfielders and 2 fullbacks that are, slightly reluctant to pass the halfway line, or at least to attack with any vigour. And you haven't got to think back too far to a time when you had one holding midfielder, be it a Benny Watson or even Ryan Yates with Kashi, playing the brand of football that he did from right back. Chris Cohen, when he was converted into a left back, would often be the focal point of attacks, would overlap his winger and really turn that flat back 4 into a dynamic attacking shape. And yeah, we sit here today with Worrell and McKenna absolutely inked into that back 4, but still massive question marks over the 2 full backs. How attacking they're going to be able to be within that system, and if they have enough attacking intent to overcome Houghton's desire to play 2 holding midfielders. So yeah, massive question mark for me in that part of the pitch, and it's a conundrum we need to crack to even have a chance of delivering the service that Taylor or Graben will need to get anywhere near 15-20 goals each.
Last one I wanted to get your take on, Temps, from transfers is you work in sport, in cricket, and not on the pitch side, the off the pitch side of it. And your job is based, I imagine, largely on a lot of forward planning when it comes to test matches and T20s and filling a cricket ground and managing a stadium. Forest's job this summer in terms of getting players through the door would have involved a lot of forward planning, going, drawing up shortlists and trying to get those deals done. Is it wrong to be critical of them scrambling around on the last day more than just about every other club in the country. Do you have some sympathy for them or not?
Yeah, massively. So I had a kind of glimpse into the football world when I was at the Olympic Stadium, and obviously, West Ham were there, and there's definitely an element of heart over head in football that doesn't exist in cricket and rugby, and slightly more stable environments where success is built on longevity and continuity, and there's relatively little player trading and player movement. But the reason for that is there's no market for it. There's no transfer fee commanded. If we were to produce an exceptionally talented player here at Trent Bridge, we wouldn't seek to sell them. So Forest are in a completely different world where players know their worth, where agents and parents and friends are all telling them they should be worth more, should angle for a move, and keeping that squad harmony together, keeping a balanced team together, and constantly looking ahead to try and fill gaps and identify the right prospect to do that is could be framed an impossible task by many. So, I mean, Marinakis has done the right thing for me now. He's pulled in a team of people who are more than aware of what's required to compete in the Championship, have a European, if not global, network of eyes, ears, and reporting tools that can be to our advantage, but it's going to take time. I don't know how they do it. I think the level of uncertainty that exists in football would cause a great deal of anxiety for those in slightly more settled sporting environments such as cricket, where we've had a director of cricket for 20 years plus now, who's won several trophies in that period of time, but has also been given time to redevelop and remold teams and reduce age profiles and, reluctantly lose players through injuries and retirements rather than people being subjected to transfer bids. So football is a completely unique working environment. There's a lot of emotion involved. We're all fans and want nothing more than seeing Forest do well. But yeah, how many times have we heard that there's a 5-year plan?
True. Right, this is very arbitrary to finish it on, but if I was to ask you for a mark out of 10 for the transfer window and the shape of the squad now, Gary, what would you be saying?
That's a little bit unfair because, you don't know these players. Until you see them, you can't give them a mark. The thing that worries me, I think Chris is so professional. He would have, I'm sure, had a list last season of players he was looking for to try and bring in and try to progress with that as a season finished last season. And it'd be just nice to know what sort of backing he was given and how much money he had to spend to bring the players he wanted in. If you don't get the money, then you can't blame the manager. So it looks like a little bit that he might have not been as backed as much as we thought he might. But we never find that out because nobody ever tells you. That's the conundrum with it all. But I'm worried. I'm still worried because lack of goals, purely and simply lack of goals. Not worried about the back. We look solid there. But if McKenna gets injured or Worrell gets injured again, as they've both been getting injured, then we start to struggle again. So it's fingers crossed that everything goes well from now on. But still, a huge part of me is thinking where the goals are going to come from again.
If we just look on the pitch briefly then, I mean, we can't ignore a Derby County game. I watched it. I hope you're going to tell me you watched it, Temps.
Yeah, I watched the game, yeah.
Good, right. Before the match, Gary, you said a point was a good result, and I was sceptical and I thought they have to win. But coming out of it, I actually thought, well, it's something to build on, and they did play, well second half, and there were positives. What was your emotions coming out of it, Temps? Were you happy or disappointed?
Disappointed, although I think the two big talking points were a definite red card in the first half that would have, clipped Derby to 10 men at an early stage, and you'd want a penalty if Joe Worrell did what he did in the opposition box. So that one's evened itself out. But yeah, I felt they were there for the taking. I think we spent weeks and weeks pre-season delighting in Derby's misery, the lack of signings, but they've put together a squad there of quite seasoned campaigners who were, very, very streetwise. and ultimately, got a point and find themselves a few points above Forest in the table. So yeah, disappointed. But the positive spot for me was the attacking intent and that bit of quality from Brennan Johnson, which I think we're all hoping to tap into for the rest of the season.
True. Have you seen the goal, Gary, for Derby?
I haven't, no.
I'll ask Temps. Just one. Do you have any sympathy for Bong? Because he's obviously made a massive rick, but it always seems like when you're the player, the spotlight's on, the ball ends up in the back of the net. It just kind of highlights it, didn't it?
Yeah, I haven't got any sympathy for Bong, other than we're now picking a player at left back who we told in the summer could leave. And there have been no suitors. And now through injury and a lack of recruitment at that point, he was in the side. But you don't stand there appealing for an offside call in the midst of a Derby game when Lawrence is going through one-on-one with the keeper. And but for that slight indecision, that hesitation, he could have affected the shot far more, and maybe the outcome would have been different. It was a quality finish as it happened, and a great ball. But for me, Bong wasn't sharp. He was rocking on his heels. And although he did make a recovery run, he didn't affect the shot anywhere near enough.
The player I wanted to talk about coming out of the game seems to be the player we always talk about in João Carvalho. Gary, you got hooked at half-time and Forest were a lot better in the second half. I don't know where to stand on him because I've been advocating for him to play, and then he plays against Stoke and does nothing. He plays against Derby and does nothing. But then the flip side of the argument is, well, what's he supposed to do in a team that's not attacking? How can he influence a game? Well, Forest did try to attack in the first half and there just wasn't much quality there. Where does João Carvalho stand with Forest now, Gary? The transfer window's closed and he's still here. What do you think?
Have you got that piece of string? How long is that piece of string? I mean, he's just such an emotive character, isn't he? He clearly has the ability. We don't doubt that. And you mentioned, it's a good point you mentioned about, is he given enough opportunity to be himself, to express himself? Because of his nature, he's a very attack-minded player. Chris plays, a little bit more cautious. So is that what's holding him back a little bit? It's so difficult to come out with the right answer regarding Carvalho. I would try to persevere because at certain points, I don't think he was ever really given that run of games where he could say, right, okay, I've had 6 games on the trot. Yeah, it's not gone for me. Then I can quite understand being left out. He'd been a bit player, comes on a sub, gets hooked at half time. And, in that respect, you feel a little bit sorry for him. But Chris has to make those decisions. He has to win football matches or get something out of football matches. And he thought it was the right thing to do. And the second half performance was, more productive. But had he stayed on with that formation in the second half, would he have been productive? We don't know. And that, again, is the conundrum. We'd like to see that. But, yeah, it's I'd like to see him at some point given, 2 or 3 games just to see what he's like and say, right, go and express yourself. Do what you do best. Don't hold back and make things happen. Just go and do it. But I'm not sure that'll happen.
Yeah, this number 10 position has just been such a bind for Forest, hasn't it, Temps? They've not nailed it down and the manager's very insistent on playing 4-2-3-1. I mean, is it Carvalho's fault or would anyone struggle the way that Forest have been playing this season in that position?
Yeah, you think he's a front foot player, isn't he? He's a bit of a luxury player, but in a side that's free flowing and attacking, you'd think he'd be invaluable. We've all seen his highlight reel, and there's a level of expectation now that when he's not running the show, he's vilified a little bit by Forest supporters. He hasn't done enough in the minutes he's had to justify being an automatic starter. So I think he's in the mix now with 2 or 3 others vying for that position. And after the international break, Forest have got 3 games in 7 days, and they're going to have to take some points from that. They're going to have to be an element of rotation, playing Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. So he'll get another go, but now he really does need to grasp it.
What's Brennan Johnson's best position, do you think? Right wing or centre, or as that number 10?
Yeah, wide right for me. I think that the weight of passing, the vision, not only for the Lyle Taylor goal early in the season, but throughout his time at at Lincoln last year as well was just so good to watch. And also he's wise enough already to know when to come off the wing and to become a second striker or a kind of 10 hovering on the edge of the box, as he did for the equaliser at the weekend. But just really pleased that he's being used, that he's in there, that he's still a Forest player, because I think he will be a Premier League player one day. And now there's a chance for us to get a year or two out of him before he commands a transfer fee, which should reinvest in this crazy market.
With if Johnson's best on the right wing, which I agree, Gary, Zinchenko wants to play there, and by all accounts he doesn't want to play inside. But Forest look better with him inside against Derby. I mean, do you have to maybe just have a word with them and say, look, it's better for the team if you play as a number 10 or number 8? Is that an awkward conversation, do you think?
No, it shouldn't be an awkward conversation, because Chris is in charge and he picks a team, and if he wants him to play there and it looks better with him playing there, then you've got to accept that. Sometimes you are played out of position. I mean, I always go back to when I played left back and had the worst horrendous game of my life, trying to mark Danny Wallace for Southampton. Dear me, what a nightmare that was.
You'll have sympathy with Bong then.
To a certain point, yeah, because I just couldn't cope with left back at all. Centre half was no problem, but yeah, you all got your favourite best positions, but sometimes players get labelled versatile, and I think that's not a good tag to be associated with. It's good for managers because they can play them in different positions, but you always have a favourite position yourself, and you want to play that. But he's got to realise that he is playing well in that position as well, and if that's helping the team, then just stay there and see what happens. You can go a run of games, and he might think, well, yeah, I do enjoy this. I hated midfield when I played for the reserves. Brian Clough put me in the reserves in midfield, and I hated it because it was box to box, and I didn't find it difficult, but I didn't enjoy it because I like getting in the box, scoring and things like that. But sometimes you have to accept it for the reasons it's done for, and the reasons it's done for are to help the team out. So, go with the flow. Don't moan. Just see how it goes, and if it's not enjoyable over a few games, then have a word with the manager. See what you can come up with between you, because he is a vital part in that starting 11, I think, now.
So now we're at the international break and we're 5 games in. I mean, in a sense, you could view this as a fresh start for Forest. Now they've got the squad in place, but they've only got 1 point on the board. Has the break come at a good time, Temps? And can we view this as a fresh start, or is that ship sailed rather now?
No, that ship has sailed, hasn't it? I mean, it's a welcome break for sure, and I hope there is ample time on the training pitch without too many absentees to the calendar of fixtures that the international teams are facing now. But there needs to be an immediate reaction, as we said before. 3 games in 6 days. I think Forest could come out of that with tails up and feeling buoyed if they can find some find the goal scoring touch and rack up some clean sheets, or they could be demoralised if they find themselves in an identical position three games further down the track. So yeah, look, break needed for sure. A chance for Houghton and the players to clear their heads, but they need to report back for business and get that first win on the board ASAP. Cardiff first up on the Sunday, followed by Middlesbrough and Huddersfield. All winnable games. I don't think any of those teams are going to be challenging at the very, very top come the end of the season. So yeah, it has to be time to get stuck in.
Tough games, though, aren't they? As well, it's the battle of the old managers, really, in the league. Warnock, Houghton, and McCarthy, the most experienced 3. And I mean, Forest, Gary, they've got to hit the ground running now, haven't they? Because they can't be 1 point from 7 games. You're right you're probably already in the mire, but you're really in the mire if you lose the next 2, aren't you?
You've got to win the next game. Pure and simple. Don't worry about the 2 after. You just got to concentrate on that next game, and if you get 3 points from that, you go into the second game with so much more confidence. That you've got to play your tactics out in that game. I just hope it is as positive as the second half was against Derby, and Chris goes for that sort of a system from the beginning, not changing it, half time or after, because we have the players in that final third now to hurt teams if they're allowed to. Just give them the rein. Say, right, go out and just do your best against them. Do what you do best. Don't hold back. I won't moan or complain about, if you do that, that's what I want you to do. But don't be cautious now. If you're cautious now, teams pick up on that. And when you're at the bottom of the league, being cautious is not the right way, because you'll just keep getting beaten, because your confidence is getting knocked even more. And, let us take games to teams now. Let us get on the front foot first and make teams chase us in a game rather than us chasing, a game all the time. I'm interested to see the next game, actually, because I think Chris might just go quite positive with a bit of luck, and then we can assess and, see what's what.
Do you have to give him another run of games now, Gary? Obviously, he was under a lot of pressure, and he still is. I mean, if things go wrong, you've got a big decision to make after the next game. But they've made these signings, and they've had this international break. Do you have to give Chris Hughton a chance to work with these players for at least another 5 games when you're 10 games into the season now?
You've got to give him a chance now, because he's got time to work with the squad. He has a squad now that is, might not be his squad totally, but he's got to work with them, and he's got to work the 3 games out that he's got coming up. What he wants to do in those 3 games, and if all goes wrong in that first week back, then you can guarantee that he's not going to be the City ground anymore. Pure and simple. He knows that. Everybody knows that. That's a game of football. That's how it works. That's how it happens. And if you lose 3 on the trot, which I don't think we will, then you've got 1 point and you're massively adrift. You have to win that first game against Cardiff, and then take each one as it comes. And if you do win the first one, your confidence rises, and as a team, as an individual.
Yeah, stick or twist temps when it comes to manager now.
Well, all I will say is he's not Dane's man. He's an inherited manager who's been backed, has an excellent reputation, and I think both as a football manager and as a man, I think he's reputed for having real strong values and being a really good fella. That doesn't cut it in football. It's a fickle business. You're soon forgotten. 3 wins out of 3 is a hero, as Gary says. 3 more on the bounce, and it will be time for a change.
Last question to each of you then. This new look squad on paper, this starting 11 looks decent. We've discussed at length the worry about the goals. I mean, Gary, optimistic or fearful now until the next transfer window in January when we can start this conversation again?
Only fearful because of lack of goals. That's the only reason I'm fearful. But the rest of it, I'm quite upbeat. You've got Garner and Zinkernagel, players who can make things happen. Brennan Johnson, if they're allowed to. If they're allowed to, I'm sure Garner will be. If we can create in that final third and actually create chances for our strikers, whoever they are, then, we've got half a chance, because, you've got to be careful with giving strikers stick, because they thrive on service. They've got no chance without that service from midfield. And playing that lone role up front is a very lonely role when you're isolated. And if you get isolated, it can be very, very tough as a striker, because you're coming deeper and deeper to get the ball. So therefore, you're not in the right areas when things are happening where you should be, because that's where you should be. But if you're honest and you keep coming towards the ball because you're not getting anything, you're then out of position for when Johnson does get wide with his pace and he's looking for somebody in the box, because we don't break that well from midfield. Your striker's not there where you want him. So again, it's that system sort of nullifies, a lone striker at times.
Has your opinion changed at all about 4-2-3-1? Now you've got Garner as someone who can put his foot on the ball, or are you still more? And Yates, I think, looks better with Garner. Are you still set against it, or can you see a bit more reason to back it now you've got Garner back?
Yeah, I can see the point in it. Yeah, I don't want to see 2 defensive midfield players. One's enough in any team, and that back 4, do very well. Thank you very much on their own at times, because they are good. They're a good combination. If they get the left back spot sorted out, then again you're looking quite solid. And then Yates allows those 2 players to do their stuff, and Johnson, he gives them that wherewithal to go out and produce and do their stuff in the final third. And if they can do that, and I think he's got to pick who he wants up front, whether it's going to be Graben or Lyle Taylor, because it seems he's not too certain at the moment which one he wants. So as a striker, next striker, you need to play a number of games to be judged, I think, because if you're on the pitch and then off the pitch, then on the pitch and off the pitch, it's difficult for a striker to get that consistency. So I think that he's got to make up his mind, which striker he wants and give him a run.
So Temps, like we say, Garner back. Max Lowe, I think, is an interesting, good signing as an attacking left back. We don't know who's going to play right back, but I see Osei Tutu's posted a positive message there about his fitness. Jed Spence, if they get him, looks really interesting attacking player. I really don't know anything about Drager, so we can't say too much about the right back. But if they're more attacking and more positive, what are your optimism levels, or are you fearful about the goals as well, like Gary?
Yeah, I echo Gary's very qualified opinion that we need someone to stick it away. And for me, that has to be Grabban that gets the back in, just because we've seen him catch fire at various points over the past 3-4 years. We haven't seen Lyle Taylor catch fire at any point in a Forest shirt. And while his age would suggest that, maybe there is more to come from him, I just think that Grabban's a far more accomplished player at this level.
Right, I think we shall leave it there. We'll be back on Monday. I recorded an episode earlier today with Nick Marshall, who used to run Forest Academy before Garry Birtles, and it's really interesting talking about Reed, Dawson, Genus, Bamford, players he worked with, and the general way academies have changed, and a lot of Liverpool stuff about Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it does go to a few different places. It's really interesting. It's about an hour long, so we'll do that, and then we'll catch up next week with Darren Fletcher, who's going to be on for Temps, who stepped in off the bench at late notice for Fletcher, which we're grateful for as ever, and perhaps Gary, you'll be back as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks very much, everyone, and we'll see you soon.